Did you know it's International Drag Day? Well, it is. And that's pretty great because drag is one of the most important fixtures in the history of gay culture. Drag queens and other transvestites were an integral part of the Stonewall riots, fighting back against police raids on gay bars, and opening the door to a new era where gay people didn't have to hide. Drag performers are in large part responsible for launching the gay rights movement as we know it. Drag offers a creative and expressive outlet for people who have already, in a sense, broken out of the typical gender norms in terms of their sexual preference. It's a way to embrace being different, openly and fabulously. To this day, drag queens have a prominent place at pride parades and other gay events, and although the importance of drag has declined somewhat as gay people have become more accepted, it remains one of the most visible symbols of the diversity of the gay community. There's something about getting all dressed up in character and putting on a show that's just really fun. But what a lot of people don't understand about drag is that it's often not an attempt at simply mimicking the style of the opposite sex. It's actually quite a bit more than that. After all, genetic women tend to look nothing like drag queens, and when they do, it's often with the intent of imitating drag queens. It's really a style all its own, an extreme exaggeration of a stereotypically feminine appearance. What's interesting is that the typical drag styles, while superficially crossing gender boundaries, can paradoxically serve as a reaffirmation of gender, simply because of how obvious they are. These highly embellished fashions can make it very clear that performers are not the sex that they portray, and it's trivial for people to identify them as such, not in spite of their appearance, but because of it. Of course, not all drag is so conspicuous. Sometimes it takes a more subdued form, incorporating the more commonplace elements of everyday feminine style. If it's subtle enough, nobody will even notice, because there's nothing that would clue them in. In contrast to the usual outrageous drag styles, this can actually be more transgressive of gender norms, as it confounds people's ability to even recognize that you're in drag and that you aren't the gender you're presenting as. I've actually noticed this happening over the past couple of years. At first, people would tell me I looked like a girl. Obviously, they thought I wasn't. Or they would call me a fag, under the assumption that I was a guy. So I decided to change things up a bit. It started out very gradually, putting on makeup, trying on jewelry, new clothes, better hair, and eventually, piece by piece, it evolved into a whole new style. And while I did come up with some looks that are more conventionally glamorous, there was always a more basic fashion underneath, something simple and casual. Surprisingly, this ended up being closer to a genuine feminine style than the excesses of drag. I can tell how effective it's been because now when people want to insult me, they'll call me a dyke or tell me I look like a man, under the assumption that I'm not. Even the haters don't know for sure anymore. Not to ignore all the positive feedback, of course. There have been plenty of people who say I'm attractive, and they appear to be using a feminine standard of beauty. And it's really interesting because this seems like even more of a disassembly of gender roles than the most extravagant varieties of drag. This isn't just consciously crossing traditional boundaries, it's almost dissolving those boundaries, to the point that people can't even reliably place your gender anymore. It's not utilizing the extremes of gender expression, only the more average elements, the actual feminine styles that are in common use, and in doing so, it works to subvert the concept of gender itself, rather than reinforcing it. And I think this is really just another dimension of drag, a different kind of style that's often overlooked in favor of the more flashy and glamorous varieties. Although, if nobody notices, I suppose that's kind of the point. All in all, it's important to realize that drag isn't limited to just one form. There's plenty of ways to do it, including the more understated look. And one of the advantages of this is how accessible it is to the average person. It really doesn't take a lot of work. If I can do it, almost anyone can. So maybe more people should try doing drag in their own unique style. You might be surprised how easy it is, and fun too.